Next time you walk into a luxury boutique and pay $300 for a pair of Prada sunglasses, you might think you're buying exclusive Italian fashion. Or maybe you prefer the classic, rebellious, all-American feel of a $200 pair of Ray-Bans, or perhaps the high-tech, sporty performance of Oakleys. They look different, they feel different, they have completely different histories. But what if I told you that you've been tricked? Welcome to the greatest illusion in the retail world, an invisible, ruthless empire that controls nearly 80% of the premium eyewear market on the planet. A $50 billion monopoly that dictates what you wear on your face and exactly how much you will pay for it. But the most shocking part of this empire isn't the monopoly itself. It's the phantom mastermind who built it. A man who didn't inherit a massive fortune, a trust fund, or a royal title. In fact, he started with absolutely zero. He was a fatherless, abandoned child, sent to a cold, unforgiving orphanage at the age of 7 because his mother simply couldn't afford a piece of bread to feed him. This is the untold story of Leonardo Del Vecchio, how a starving orphan ruthlessly conquered the global luxury market to become a $30 billion predator. Welcome to Wealth Memoir, and this is the $50 billion illusion.
The year is 1935, Milan, Italy. While the world's elite were parading in tailored suits and fine jewelry, a boy named Leonardo Del Vecchio was born into a reality completely devoid of luxury. In fact, it was devoid of almost everything. His tragedy began before he even took his first breath. 5 months before Leonardo was born, his father passed away. He left behind a desperate widow and 5 children in a deeply impoverished pre-war Europe. His mother fought tirelessly to keep her family together, but poverty is a ruthless enemy. By the time Leonardo was just 7 years old, his mother was forced to make a devastating decision. Unable to afford even a single meal for her youngest son, she surrendered him to the orphanage. For most children, the orphanage is where hope goes to die. It was a cold, strictly disciplined, and lonely place. But for young Leonardo, it wasn't a prison, it was a forge. The isolation didn't break him, it hardened him. It taught him the ultimate lesson of his life. If he wanted to survive, no one was going to save him. He had to save himself. At just 15 years old, Leonardo was thrown into the brutal reality of a tool and die factory. He worked as an apprentice, enduring grueling 12-hour shifts stamping metal parts and carving molds. It was dangerous, back-breaking work. In fact, a severe factory accident would eventually slice off a piece of his left index finger, a permanent physical reminder of the brutal price of his early labor. But Leonardo wasn't just a mindless worker, he was an observer. After his exhausting shifts, the teenager didn't go home to rest. He went to night school at a local academy, studying design and engraving. Because amidst the grease, the deafening noise, and the flying sparks of the factory floor, the orphan had noticed something. The exact same metalworking skills used to stamp car parts could be used to craft the delicate, precise components of eyeglasses. He didn't have a dollar to his name, but that single realization was the spark that would eventually burn down the entire optical industry.
By 1961, Leonardo Del Vecchio was 26 years old. He had spent the last decade of his life surviving the brutal noise of the Milanese factories. He had mastered the art of working with metal, creating the tiny, intricate parts used for eyeglasses. But Leonardo was suffocating. He knew that if he stayed in Milan, He would forever be just another disposable worker stamping metal for someone else's fortune. He didn't want a wage, he wanted an empire. So he packed up everything he had, which wasn't much, and made a decision that seemed completely insane to everyone who knew him. He moved away from the bustling industrial hub of Milan to a tiny, isolated mountain town called Agordo, nestled deep in the Italian Alps. Why Agordo? It wasn't for the scenery. The local government of this remote area was desperate to attract businesses and was offering free land to anyone willing to start a company. For a man with no capital, free land was the ultimate lottery ticket. In that quiet mountain town with just a handful of employees and second-hand machinery, Leonardo opened a small workshop. He called it Luxottica. The name itself was a vision, a combination of the Italian words luce, light, and ottica, optics. At first, Luxottica wasn't making glamorous sunglasses for movie stars. They were at the very bottom of the food chain. They were simply a contract manufacturer, making the tiny, unglamorous metal hinges, screws, and frames for other, bigger optical companies. For an entire decade, Leonardo kept his head down. He worked grueling hours, obsessing over the microscopic details of every hinge and screw. While his competitors were focused on cheap mass production, Leonardo treated every tiny piece of metal as if it were a piece of jewelry. His obsession with precision quickly earned Luxottica a reputation for unparalleled quality. Soon, the biggest brands in Italy were knocking on his door, outsourcing their manufacturing to his small mountain shop. By 1971, the money was finally rolling in. Luxottica was a massive success as a supplier. Any normal man would have been satisfied. He had escaped the orphanage, survived the factories, and built a profitable business. But Leonardo Del Vecchio was not a normal man. He realized a terrifying truth about his business model. As long as he was just making the parts, the real power and the real money belonged to the brands whose names were stamped on the final product. He didn't just want a piece of the pie anymore. He realized that to truly win, he had to own the entire bakery. And so began the most aggressive, ruthless strategy the optical world had ever seen.
In business, there is a golden rule. Whoever controls the final product controls the profit. If you're just a supplier, you're at the mercy of the brands you serve. They can squeeze your margins, demand cheaper prices, or drop you overnight. Leonardo Del Vecchio was tired of being at their mercy. So, at the 1971 International Optics Exhibition in Milan, he dropped a bomb on the industry. Instead of showing up with a box of hinges and metal frames for other companies to buy, Luxottica presented its very first collection of complete, finished eyeglasses. Every single piece, the frame, the screws, the lenses, the design, was entirely conceptualized and manufactured in his factory in Agordo. He didn't just want to supply the industry anymore. He wanted to be the industry. This is a business strategy known as vertical integration. Vertical integration means cutting out the middlemen. Usually, one company designs the glasses, another manufactures them, a third distributes them, and a fourth sells them in a retail store. Everyone takes a cut of the profit. But Leonardo engineered a system where Luxottica did it all. By owning the entire supply chain, he could produce glasses faster, cheaper, and with higher quality than anyone else in the world. He choked out the competition with ruthless efficiency. But then came the 1980s. Leonardo realized something that would change the trajectory of human consumerism forever. Historically, glasses were a medical device. They were for people who couldn't see well. They were often ugly, clunky, and associated with nerds or the elderly. But Leonardo looked at a pair of glasses and saw something else: prime real estate. It sits right on your face. It's the first thing people look at when they speak to you. What if glasses weren't just a medical necessity? What if they were luxury fashion. In 1988, he executed a move of pure genius. He approached the legendary Italian designer Giorgio Armani. Armani had the prestige, the glamour, and the elite brand name. But Armani didn't know how to manufacture glasses. Luxottica did. They signed a licensing agreement. Luxottica would make the glasses for a few dollars in their factory, slap the Armani logo on the side, and suddenly a piece of plastic and metal was selling for $200. It was the birth of the premium eyewear market, and Leonardo kept the lion's share of the profit. He had cracked the code to infinite wealth, but he was just getting started. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of billionaire empires, do me a quick favor, hit that like button down below. It tells the YouTube algorithm that this documentary is worth watching, and it helps us keep uncovering these incredible stories for you. Now, let's get back to the story, because what Leonardo did next wasn't just smart business, it was corporate warfare.
By the late 1990s, Leonardo Del Vecchio had perfected the art of making glasses. He had successfully turned a piece of medical equipment into high-end fashion. But the Orphan from Milan wasn't satisfied with just making glasses for other designers. He wanted to own the heritage of the industry itself. It was time to go hunting, and his first target was an American icon, Ray-Ban. For decades, Ray-Ban was the ultimate symbol of American cool. But by 1999, the brand was dying. Bausch & Lomb, the company that owned Ray-Ban, had severely mismanaged it. They were mass-producing cheap plastic versions and selling them in gas stations and convenience stores for just $19. The prestige was gone. Leonardo saw an opportunity. He bought Ray-Ban for $640 million. What he did next is a masterclass in business psychology. The moment Luxottica took control, Leonardo immediately pulled Ray-Bans out of over 13,000 cheap retail locations across the world. He stopped production entirely to create artificial scarcity. Then, he upgraded the materials, improved the lenses, and relaunched the exact same classic designs. But this time, they weren't $19, they were $150. By artificially starving the market and rebranding it as a premium product, Leonardo revived Ray-Ban from the dead and turned it into the crown jewel of his empire. But not everyone was willing to bow down to the Italian king. Enter Oakley. In the early 2000s, Oakley was the absolute giant of performance and sports eyewear. They were rebellious, highly innovative, and fiercely independent. And more importantly, they were one of Luxottica's biggest rivals. Leonardo wanted to buy them. Oakley's CEO said no. They didn't want to be swallowed by a corporate monopoly. So Leonardo Del Vecchio decided to teach them a lesson in leverage. You see, a few years earlier, Luxottica had quietly purchased Sunglass Hut, the largest sunglass retail chain in the world. When Oakley refused to merge, Luxottica used its ultimate weapon. They demanded lower wholesale prices from Oakley. When Oakley refused again, Luxottica simply stopped stocking Oakley glasses in all of their Sunglass Hut stores worldwide. It was a brutal, calculated execution. Without the massive retail distribution of Sunglass Hut, Oakley's sales collapsed. Their stock price plummeted by 33% almost overnight. They were bleeding out, and investors were panicking. Once the company was weakened and its value had crashed, Leonardo walked back into the room. In 2007, Luxottica bought Oakley in a hostile-style takeover for $2.1 billion. The rebel was dead. The empire had won. He had conquered the brands, he had crushed the competition, but buying the rivals was only phase 2. What Leonardo did next is the terrifying reason why every single time you step into a mall to buy glasses, you are stepping into a carefully constructed trap. A trap so perfect, it's practically invisible.
Because Luxottica doesn't just own the brands, they own the stores. And, most shockingly, they own the doctor who checks your eyes. Don't click away, because the deepest layer of this $50 billion illusion is about to be exposed.
Welcome to the matrix of modern retail, the ultimate illusion of choice. Imagine you need a new pair of glasses. You walk into a massive shopping mall. You see a sunglass hut, but you think, no, they're too expensive. So you walk down the hall and go into lens crafters instead. Not your style? You try Pearl Vision. Or maybe you decide to just run to Target Optical to find a better deal. You think you are shopping around. You think you are comparing prices and forcing competing businesses to fight for your money. But you aren't. Every single one of those stores is owned by Luxottica. Leonardo Del Vecchio didn't just want to control the brands you wear. He wanted to control the physical ground you stand on when you buy them. But the monopoly doesn't stop at the cash register. It goes much, much deeper, right into your health care. In the United States, millions of people rely on vision insurance to afford their eye exams and glasses. The second largest vision care provider in the entire country is a massive company called EyeMed. Guess who owns EyeMed? You guessed it, Luxottica. Let's break down exactly how this brilliant, inescapable trap works. Step 1. Your employer deducts money from your paycheck every month to pay for your EyeMed insurance. That money goes straight to Leonardo's empire. Step 2. When your vision gets blurry, you use your EyeMed insurance to visit an eye doctor. But you go to the doctor located inside lens crafters. That doctor is essentially renting space from Luxottica. The exam fee? It goes into the Luxottica ecosystem. Step 3. The doctor hands you a prescription and you walk out to the retail floor to pick out your frames. You carefully choose between Prada, Versace, Armani, Oakley, or Ray-Ban. It doesn't matter which one you pick. They are all made in the exact same Luxottica factory in Italy. The money never leaves the circle. This is why a piece of molded plastic and a few metal screws, which costs maybe $3 to $5 to manufacture, can be sold to you for $300, $400, or even $500. When one single company controls the factory that makes the glasses, the brands that design them, the retail stores that sell them, and the insurance company that dictates how much you are allowed to spend, the concept of a free market completely disappears. There is no competition. There is only a toll booth. And sitting at the center of that toll booth was the Orphan from Milan, quietly collecting a tax on the eyesight of 500 million people worldwide.
On June 27, 2022, Leonardo Del Vecchio passed away at the age of 87. He left behind a personal net worth of nearly $30 billion, making him the second richest man in Italy. But more importantly, he left behind an inescapable legacy. He was a man who was handed absolutely nothing, a boy thrown away by a broken society into a cold orphanage, a teenager who sacrificed his own flesh in a brutal metal factory. Yet through sheer, ruthless willpower and an unmatched obsession with control, he built a $50 billion empire that practically governs human eyesight. Today, Luxottica, now merged into EssilorLuxottica, is bigger than ever. So the next time you put on a pair of premium sunglasses,
take a close look at the logo on the side. It might say Chanel, it might say Armani, it might say Ray-Ban, but behind the polished metal and the tinted glass, you are wearing the legacy of the Orphan from Milan. A man who proved that the greatest product you can ever sell to the world is the illusion of choice. If you think Luxottica's monopoly on your face is terrifying, wait until you see how one ruthless predator monopolized the entire luxury fashion industry. From Louis Vuitton to Dior, it's all controlled by one man. Click the video on your screen right now to watch how LVMH became a $400 billion empire, the ugly truth. I've also left the link in the pinned comment below. Thank you for watching Wealth Memoir. I'll see you in the next one.